Right, let's go. All right, hello. Welcome back to Yes We Cannabis. I'm Callie, your friendly, outdoor-grown, now forest-dwelling, certified medical cannabis consultant, and I am back to talk about one of my favorite things, cannabis. I mean, surprise. I do want to just sit back and give a nice shout out to me and Zach. You might notice if you're watching the video that we have a new space. We have put together a little studio at our house. Basically, it's a little home studio, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done. We have DIY'd the shit out of this, and I think it's just worth celebrating and shouting out. You know, sometimes you just got to make shit happen, and we definitely did. And shout out to Zach for really making a lot of this come together, especially when it comes to measuring things.
Hey, we got a plan in our head and we executed it, and now we get to just enjoy the fruits of our labor.
We get to reap the rewards.
Speaking of fruits, what
baby.
are we talking about today?
We're talking about cannabis, baby. Let's go. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, not out of the way, but, talked about, so it's been a minute. A lot has happened, I'm sure, as everybody is understanding and feeling. And, with that recent administration change that we have experienced, I know that a lot of people in my personal community are really fucking stressed, myself included. And even though life's exhausting and it's really scary to look at, it is time to prioritize getting up and making shit happen, This project, Yes We Cannabis, is one of my personal passion projects. I'm sure if you've been around since it started, you might have gathered that. And the only way to keep on keeping, at least for me, is to funnel all of this sacred rage and fear that I got bubbling up inside of me and just put it into something that I hope can make some sort of difference for a community and for a plant that has changed my life in so many ways. So, I think it's safe to say, with that in mind, it's time that we really start talking politics. And in particular, today, I would love to talk about the Washington State House Bill 1141 concerning collective bargaining for agricultural cannabis workers. So we're going to get into the brass tacks of it. So stick with me. I'm hoping this will be a nice discussion for a little later, but let's go. So here in Washington State, there has been a push to protect the cannabis industry and its workers, and I have been really fortunate enough to be a part of it. I've had the opportunity to be involved with the movement of this particular bill, and I do think it is really important and a really important topic to be discussing right now for a myriad of reasons, which we're definitely going to be getting into. So, House Bill 1141. This bill establishes a new chapter in Title 49 of the Revised Code of Washington that would place agriculture workers involved in the cultivation, growing, harvesting, or production of cannabis under the jurisdiction of the Public Employment Relations Commission for collective bargaining purposes. It defines key terms such as employee, employer, bargaining representative, and labor dispute, and it outlines the rights of employees to organize and select their bargaining representatives without interference from employers. So this bill mandates that employers must engage in collective bargaining and prohibits unfair labor practices by both employers and bargaining representatives. So, kind of in summary, this bill would grant agriculture workers in the cannabis industry the right to unionize. Currently, all the other workers in the industry, they do have the right to unionize, and the reason that growers are excluded is because in our state, Washington, agriculture workers as a whole, they do not have the right to unionize, which is... we will get into that. I have a lot of feelings.
That's fucking crazy.
It's fucking crazy.
Just to throw my 2 cents in.
I
didn't know that until you started this journey that you're on now. And I I tell everybody I know that because I'm like, that's a secret. We got to get that out. That needs to be more known.
Talk about, it really does feel like a secret. And I mean, I think it is a very deliberate one that we have, or they have been keeping. Unionizing in general is not something we exactly talk about on the whole. So, I'm glad that we're doing it. But so right now, agriculture workers in our state do not have the right to unify. It is not protected, unionize, not protected under law like it is for so many other labor workers. All right, let's get back to that bill. So additionally, this bill details the procedures for certifying bargaining representatives, conducting elections, and the obligation of employers regarding due deductions from employees' salaries. It also stipulates that collective bargaining agreements remain in effect after their termination until a new agreement is reached, and it allows for binding arbitration of disputes. It's a lot. This is a lot, I know. The commission is empowered to prevent unfair labor practices and issue remedial orders, ensuring compliance with new regulations. So overall, the legislation aims to enhance labor rights and protections for cannabis agriculture workers in Washington state. I know it's a mouthful, but I just wanted to get the brass tacks, like I was saying, out there. I think it's important that we kind of understand the language of this bill and what it is looking to achieve. I don't think we talk enough about what is actually happening in our political system, within the government, in this way. At least I have not been doing that through my life, up until now, or the last few years especially. So, we're bringing it to the people. Oh, whoever listens to this, let's go. So the primary sponsor for this bill is Lillian Ortiz Self. She's a representative from the 21st District here in Washington. And on January 15th of this month, or this year, I guess this month, 2025, I was able to attend the public hearing for this bill in the House Labor and Workplace Standards Committee. So I wanted to discuss this day, what happened, and bring attention to it because I do really think that it's important, because we need to start talking about how many systematic issues we face and how many of them are intrinsically linked to each other. That includes cannabis rights and union rights. So let's go. Here's a brief summary of kind of how that day went. So 6 people testified in favor of this bill, including Nathan Howell, Morgan Combs, and Jess Combs, who have all worked for Fat Panda, which is one of the largest producers of cannabis in our state. And they all cited the disrespect and oppression that the company has shown and continues to show in regards to their employees. Then Dustin Lambro also testified in support of this. He works with UFC 3000, which is actually the union that I work for, which is one of the reasons I also was able to kind of become involved in this, which is really great. So shout out, Dustin. Thanks for doing all that great work. Also included in this, testifying in support, was Mike Asai, who is the president of Black Excellence in Cannabis, or BEC, and he's also the founder of Emerald City Collective. So Asai testified that BEC's purpose was, quote, a mission born out of the struggle, resilience, and hope of people who have endured far too much, end quote. He said that House Bill 1141 represented, quote, more than a policy proposal. It is a moral imperative, a call to correct the legacy of injustice. Black and brown communities bore the brunt of the cannabis criminalization. Now, as this industry flourishes, many of the same communities find themselves working in the fields, cultivating the very plant that was once used as a weapon against them. Let us not forget, this bill is about equity. House Bill 1141 ensures that the workers, many from the communities most harmed by prohibition, are no longer silent. It gives them a seat at the table and the tools to advocate for themselves and for their families. So he insisted, end quote. So he insisted that the bill provided legislators a, quote, moment to build an industry that reflects the values of justice, fairness, and opportunity, end quote. Libby Rindle, co-founder of Lilac City Gardens, also testified in favor of this bill. She stated that she is, quote, in strong support of the Washington Cannabis Workers Club, end quote, and the industry, quote, can and must do better for its workers, end quote. Noting agriculture's workers' exemption from the National Labor Relations Act, she said this left those that supplied cannabis in Washington, quote, unable to organize and advocate for basic workplace rights. I believe this is a deeply flawed system. I know some may wonder why a business owner would support this legislation, but this is about recognizing the broader structural challenges in our industry, end quote. Noting that small businesses could struggle to provide for workers, she stated, quote, I believe this legislation creates a pathway to address those gaps, ensuring that cannabis agriculture workers have access to the tools they need to build stable and secure futures. A step towards creating a fairer, healthier, and more sustainable industry, one where workers are valued and empowered, end quote. So aside from people testifying in support, there were also 4 people who testified against this bill. And these included Vicki Christopherson, who is the executive director from the Washington Cannabis Business Association. And she explained that WACA represented licensees in every part of the industry, including production. She stated, quote, literally every single one of them in the state of Washington is a small business. There's no big business in cannabis, end quote. She said that despite, quote, the sales numbers you see for cannabis, very few businesses in this industry operate with a profit margin, and producers, the growers, are struggling the most under a frustrating oversupply of products and prices that have dipped extremely low, so low we have trouble competing with the illicit market, end quote. Asserting that, quote, hundreds, end quote, of producer licenses were dormant due to the situation, Christofferson remarked that there was, quote, a long history and significant policy reasons behind the restrictions surrounding agriculture labor laws, and those issues apply to cannabis as well, end quote. She advised keeping cannabis workers, quote, on the same playing field as our peers in the wheat, hops, and apple growers in Washington state, end quote. Mike Gempler, the executive director of the Washington Growers League, Scott Dilley, the public affairs director from the Worker and Farmer Labor Association, and Ezra Eichmeyer, the founder of Producers Northwest, were all speaking to the agricultural side of this bill. So all three spoke to how opening the door to allowing agriculture workers to unionize would be bad for farmers and small businesses, and they would not be able to, quote, afford the cost of workers unionizing, end quote. Representative Alex Yarba noted that he is a third-generational farmer who worked in Central Washington, and he reflected that, quote, most folks he talked to, they don't want to unionize and haven't wanted to unionize. So the question is, will this open up the avenue for unions where farm workers may not want them, end quote. There were an additional 179 people who registered their support of this bill, including yours truly, and also Zach's truly, and 188 that registered their opposition. This bill passed the House of Committee 6-3, so I'm celebrating that. That's a huge win. Also, I do want to shout out one of the representatives who approved this bill was Representative Sean Scott, who recently won the second seat in Washington's 42nd District. I do want to shout him out because he's an incredibly progressive person. He's out there fighting for the right causes. I had the chance to canvass for him actually last Halloween night, last October in the pouring rain, but I'm really proud to have done it. He's a really great dude, and I think he's going to do a lot for the people of Washington State for sure. So thanks, Scott. Okay, I think now that we kind of have an understanding of what this bill is, quite literally, just like we're reading it out. We're going to take a moment. We're going to have a little smoke break, and we're going to come back and dig into why, one, I think it's important we talk about this, and two, why I personally strongly support this bill, especially as both somebody from the cannabis industry and somebody who works for a union and has unionized workplaces. So we'll be right back. I can't help but dance to it every time. It's a vibe. We're going, right?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
I was just leaving you hanging.
God damn it.
It's your show. You didn't even introduce the people.
Hey, I'm sorry. Well, hi, we're back. We had a little moment, you know.
Whoa, we're demonetized now.
Honestly, if any sponsor had a problem with that, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
That's
Not
fair.
that we have those, but like if anybody was having feelings, I'd be like, we're talking about fucking weed every time.
We're talking about smoking it.
Talking about smoking it. Okay.
Not fucking it.
God fucking damn it. Okay. Wonderful. Welcome back. We're back. You can tell that we smoked. Thank you, Cannabis, for doing so much for us. So grateful for it. Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it. I kind of want to now just kind of like open dialogue, I guess, me and Zach, which is I'm grateful that you're here to do this with me, about why I think this is such an important bill, and why I'm personally invested, and why I think we need to be following this kind of thing, and why we need to be talking about this kind of thing, especially right now while we're looking at in regards to like unions, in regards to that right. Okay, I kind of want to let me lay some groundwork because I think it's important that we understand like what a union is and what they do and all that jazz, because I think there's just a lot of misconceptions out there and it's important to talk about, especially right now. So to unionize unions. So the First Amendment, the right, free speech, right? It grants us the right to unionize, like as a collective. And in 1935, the National Relations Labor Act was passed, and it basically ensured that workers were like guaranteed the right to like collective bargaining ultimately. So like as a collective. So in regards to like a labor union, which is like the kind of unions that I work for and whatnot. It's when like a group of workers come together, and if they have majority, basically, like under a vote, they are legally recognized as like an entity. And as a group, the workers have the legal right to collectively bargain with their employer. So they have a right to ask for workplace safety. They have a right to ask for like higher wages. It protects them against that legally because it's really important because historically we have not been a very pro-labor country. I don't know. We were kind of founded on, unpaid labor, you might fucking say. You know what I mean? So, but I think it's important that we're talking about unions because right now we're facing an administration that is very anti-union. If anybody out there wants to come at me and say that like the motherfucking Teamsters president was out there on that stage like endorsing Trump, like he's a scab, like I will say it because that party, the MAGA party, this fascist conservative Christian nationalist party that has sprung up is not pro-union. They are not pro-worker. They are not pro-labor by any means. They are pro-employer. They're pro-corporate. They are pro-millionaires, billionaires. The people who have the money. It's like that's who they're voicing. Like that's who they care about. So
very famously, in fact, pardon me.
You were pardoned.
Very famously, in fact, the current president and first gentleman of the United States, Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they were bragging about how they love to fire union workers on that infamous X/Twitter Spaces fiasco
interview
in
quote
the lead up to the election.
Yeah, dude, quite literally talking about how much they loved firing workers who are on strike, which is
blatantly illegal.
Illegal. This is the thing that is crazy. All these misconceptions about unions. These big corporations, especially like these monopolies, these huge fucking like multi-billion-dollar corporations and whatnot, they actively put anti-union training like rhetoric into their training, like when they're training their managers and stuff. So which is illegal to do as well. So like if anybody even like whispers the word union at work, any worker, like, and if like somebody hears it, like it's important to like shut it down. Like managers are taught to literally be like, by whatever you need to do, stop that talk. And people have lost jobs over it. Like the amount of people who have lost jobs over this, I don't even know if we have a number. But like, before we were protected by the fucking NLRA, like people were dying for the right to unionize, the right to strike, like the right to ask for what they deserve. So, yeah, I think one of the reasons this is a really important act is not only like aside from cannabis, like obviously we're going to get into that as well. Workers in general in this country have a constitutionally protected right to organize and to request to have a say for what they get for the work that they do. And there has been so much, what is the word I want to say? Well, it's propaganda, honestly, about what unions are, what they do. There's so much fear mongering behind it. People are terrified to even like talk about the idea or concept of it, especially at work, because we've been taught to. And there's no reason to be afraid of it because we are legally protected, And it's extra crazy because okay, we are legally protected, but now we need to get into the part of this bill which like talks about agriculture workers, because I was talking earlier about how in the cannabis industry, growers, producers, they are not protected right now, like by the right to unionize, because one of the exceptions to the labor like fields and to the fields and industries that they do not have the right to unionize is the agriculture industry, and that is so blatantly like a systematic issue. Like systematic racism is all fucking up in that shit, right? And like if you think about it, agriculture is one of like the oldest industries, honestly, in our country. if you think about textiles and stuff. Also interesting that at least we forget that hemp was like the number one industry in our country for a while. Remember when we talked about that? Shout out, episode maybe 2 or something. But when it's just great to take a certain population of people who work in a certain industry and basically say you do not have the same rights as everybody else. Every other worker in this country is fucking crazy in general. And it's also very interesting that this industry, and let me say, when they were talking about how, you know, businesses are like, oh, they can't afford like for people to unionize, blah, blah, blah. First off, if you treat your workers well, if you have a good workplace, if there is respect in the workplace, they will not have to unionize. To actively work to make sure they do not have the right to unionize if they wanted to is just like so clearly anti-worker. It is so clearly like anti-human rights. It's crazy. But in regards to agriculture, historically speaking, and like also like now, I mean, most of like major like big corp agriculture, like big farms, like big vegetable, big meat, big dairy. Most of the people that work on those farms are immigrants, and a lot of them are undocumented. But because of that, they can provide. Well, not they offer cheap labor. Like they will pick the jobs, and it is cheap labor. That's how these like big CEOs and these big rich fuckers. That's how they see it. And because they are often immigrants and undocumented, like they're much more like they're oppressed in their, you know, in that way, and they are controlled by making sure that they can stay in this country, you know, by the fear of being kicked out, of being deported. And I mean, I don't think I have to go on too much of like a fucking soapbox when I'm talking about like this and like obviously why people who might be undocumented are afraid of any legal like action. And they're talking about like House Representative was it Ybarra. He was talking about how he used to work on farms in central Washington. He's like, people didn't want to unionize. There wasn't talk about that. No fucking shit. They're not talking about it. I'm sure they're terrified to talk about it.
You get fired on the spot. They'll call ICE on your ass.
Yeah. It's like you could get deported, and you could have your documents and still be deported when it comes to like when it comes to farm workers. That's also the thing, the agriculture community in general. Like, it's like their laws do not protect them. It's like they're the one group of people for sure. But anyway, so when they're talking about like these businesses won't be able to afford it, when it comes to agriculture, the big farms that would need the unions to help protect the workers and their rights, they would be able to afford to have a unionized workplace.
Also, how fitting that the 3 workers of farms who all testified pro were all from Fat Panda.
Fucking yeah, dude. Yeah, exactly. Where it's like that is a big producer here in Washington State. There's a lot of, I would say the industry has a lot of different feelings about Fat Panda. You know, like they're a powerhouse in regards to the cannabis industry, like in regards to like numbers and profits and all that jazz. But the thing is, like, their working conditions are shit. Like you said, there were 3 different people that work at Fat Panda who testified because like the company is unionized except for the ag workers right now. Like that is like something that is happening, and that is crazy in a workplace to be like, y'all can do it, but you can't because you grow things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like they get down to the bottom rung of the ladder and they suddenly pretend like their pockets are empty.
It's crazy.
What?
It's fucking crazy. And that also, because getting back to the cannabis part of this, when they say that there's not like a lot of profit margin, there's not a lot of money in cannabis, it's bull fucking shit. It is one of the biggest industries in our state. Definitely one of the biggest industries in California. I think, is it Michigan that has like the largest cannabis industry in the state? I'll look into that. I know one of them does, but the amount of like money that the cannabis industry brings in for like the state, for like local government and for funding is crazy, like the tax money. And it's just so crazy to me that they're like claiming like these people won't be able to operate because the owners of these companies they are the ones who are sitting on like so much fucking cash, because the cannabis industry is also it's usually it is full of the cannabis community, the people who utilize cannabis, and they are working in the industry because they're very passionate about it. Like, I found the cannabis industry because, one, I'm very fucking passionate about, well, I like smoking weed. Like, that was one of the, I wanted to work at a cannabis shop because I was like, if I have to go back to work after I had to leave Microsoft for unionizing and they pushed me to a mental health crisis. Also, like, one of the reasons we need to talk openly about unionizing and like what it is to like be a union, because even when you use your rights and even when you are out there like protected by law, they will do anything they can, like these companies, like these big bads, to just like fucking silence you. And I got like, yeah, it just was bad. It was just bad, It was interesting, like the turncoat energy, and just like to want to like defend something that in my mind is like, why are it's like, this is simple, this is a choice, like it's okay for us to do this. I don't know like why anybody would not want us to fight for our rights. So, but it was very interesting to just like be a worker there and having to like continue working while also unionizing when like your management knew that you were doing that anyway. But after that, obviously left that. Cannabis was a big reason why I was able to like get my shit back together and heal from that mental health crisis. I'm still doing it. Obviously it's like a lifelong thing, but I was like, if I have to go back to work, because I had to go back to work because we have to make money. I was like, I smoke a lot of weed, might as well save a little bit of money on weed. And also I am very interested in it, and which is how I got into that industry. I'm saying this because like I entered it because I am passionate about it, and I like, it is an industry I want to be in. Like, you are not in the cannabis industry unless you really want to be there, because it is always a risky business. It is a risky industry because even though it is legal on a state level, it is not federally legalized. So like I've talked about in the past, like at the end of the day, like they could like, people can come in, like the feds could come in and shut you down, and they could arrest you if they wanted, So there's a risk. They're not going to do that. Cannabis makes too much money.
Speaking of money, I didn't want to interrupt you. You've been going on a tirade.
Did it make sense?
I have stats. If you'd like to hear.
Yes.
According to Fool.com, which seems like a reputable stock
Fool.com.
revenue.
I'm into it.
Revenue generation. The Motley Fool is the full name of the rag.
Only.
So by state, would you like to know? Okay, here's a few questions I guess. Would you like to know the top 5? Should I go in descending from number 5 to number 1?
Yes.
So number 5. Making, what is this? Looks like $289 million. Most recent tax year, according to Fool.com, is Arizona.
Okay.
$289 million. $290 million is Michigan.
Okay.
$454 million.
See?
Almost $455 million, Washington State. Third highest state in the nation. Second, Illinois. $457 million, 284,000. And number 1, this is crazy, California, with over $1 billion in marijuana revenue. So while you're saying all this and there's no money to go around, keep in mind the marijuana industry made $450 million, almost $455 million in revenue.
In this state.
In this state of Washington. Yes.
Revenue.
Yes.
And so when they say there's not money to go around, there is. And I know it is a complicated like conversation talking about like licenses and like the lottery for that, and like the ability to like start growing and the ability to start thinking about like selling and whatnot. So I know it is complicated, but to say that like the industry, that it will hurt the industry, it'll hurt businesses, it won't. And when we talk about unionizing, workplaces that tend to have to unionize are ones where they are being treated like shit. Usually they're underpaid, like with very little benefits. And especially, and the reason they usually want to unionize is because they look at the fucking owners, the bosses, and they see like what the difference is when it comes to wages. Like there's you will always see that trend. And when it comes to like small businesses, it's like, yeah, I understand. It's like mom and pop shops would have a hard time doing that. But the thing is, they're probably treating their employees pretty well. They're probably doing what they can, and I'm talking like outside of cannabis. Like,
well, if you want to stick to cannabis too, not to out too much information about you, but you worked in a relatively small, low ceiling cannabis shop, and the owner of that cannabis shop was raking in absurd amounts of money compared to the employees, and that's a small blip on the map.
Exactly.
The shop you worked in was a small shop.
Yeah, dude. And let me. This will give a really great. Yeah, you're right. We're a single shop, like not even like multiple shops or anything. The year previous, prior to like when I started working there, their profit the year before was $4 million profit.
That's profit.
Profit, and he paid his employees minimum wage, no benefits, just a discount on product, which is a real. To be fair, like that's why you do it, and also because you're passionate about it. Where I am, but just to like sit on $4 million profit and then turn you and be like, there's no money left for you is fucking crazy, especially when you don't even smoke weed or you're not even a part of the community, which a lot of owners of these big shops
not only are not part of the community, they actively shun the community. Exactly.
Look down upon it. One of the reasons it was easy for me to organize my cannabis shop was because of the owner, because of how he treated people. And like he legitimately like looked at us like dumb stoners. Like he would use that language with us, They would talk about how like stoners, like we had to wear a uniform. We weren't allowed to wear beanies because they said that like it made us look bad and like that like stoners are lazy.
Yet they had beanies that were made that had the logo of the shop on them.
It's just crazy and like that, and like actively racist, actively sexist. Just not a good person. Like,
again, this is one shop.
One shop.
In
like,
one small part of Seattle,
dude.
Obviously.
But still, but like not good
small,
people.
Small fish.
Yeah. And I will say like this, I remember him telling me about how when he got into cannabis, he didn't even use it. I don't even know if he had tried it. He just knew there was profit in it. And so he decided to invest in it because he sold his old business. I have a hunch maybe because they had some issues with him, but anyway, and this was his like quote retirement, and to just me sit back and be like, so this is your retirement, and yet you want to sit on how much fucking profit, and you don't want to look at the people who are in your shop, who are the ones who are selling this product to customers. Like you can't sell this product without bud tenders. You can't sell this product without like your inventory and like, your product, that your manager and like people who are like ordering this stuff. Like you can't do any of that at all. And you're not going to make that profit without them. And to actively look down on a community of people who are passionate enough about something to show up and work like in the open in a job where like obviously like I said before, the odds of you getting like arrested or in trouble for it are not high, but like it's a risk, and it was also just to actively look down on a community that is so misunderstood, and because of this like propaganda and because of these like racial issues and because of like just because it's criminalized, it's demonized, like to have these biases but still decide to make a profit off of a community that needs this like is I think just
it's also not hard to imagine if that's how shop owners are treating their employees. What is it like in the fields and in the buildings where this product is being grown, which is already, the product itself has such a shady history with its cultivation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of those practices have probably carried over into the legal age.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember I think it was Nick Wallace, the first, I could be, that name could have come out of nowhere. It probably did. But one of the people who were testifying like in favor of the bill, he was an agriculture worker, and he talked about how like he like even like just as like after pesticides had been like sprayed and like when like during the time where you like are not supposed to be in the grow room because it's like dangerous, like his manager would like make him go do things. You know what I mean? It's just like that kind of stuff.
Seems like something you'd want to unionize over.
Interesting enough. But exactly, it's pretty baffling to me. And it's also really interesting that here in like Washington, like the shop I worked at was a very interesting shop. It's a beautiful shop. Also shout out to Theorem Cannabis. I love y'all. Y'all are the best. I'm just, yeah, great experience. I mean, obviously I actually left to do this union stuff. It was how I got my little foot in the door. But I don't really know where I was Oh, the clientele is very interesting. Like, they try to be very like open for like all kinds of people to feel comfortable being in a cannabis shop because it can be very overwhelming. But it's interesting when you see the differences in like generations, and you can see the differences in like belief systems. And I mean, I remember there was like a regular who would come in and she would wear a Blue Lives Matter hat into a cannabis shop. And to me, I'm like, how fucking insensitive are you? Like no thought, like no understanding of like the history of the not only just like the plant, but the social dynamics behind it, like the systematic like racism and the systematic oppression that comes with it. Like to not even be aware of that, and to be just like, I'm gonna utilize this because like I have the privilege to do it. It's just like, so anyway, why were we talking about this?
We were talking about theorem. You kind of just like you kind of just brought it.
I
You
guess,
kind of just went off on it.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna stop you. You're cooking.
Yeah. I think when I'm talking about bringing it back to like one of the
House
reasons,
Bill 1141.
of like allowing people to unionize. We were talking about the profits. We were talking about like how much money is in cannabis, and there's just it's an industry that attracts a lot of greed. And because of its history, I remember one of the people I work with at the union, Tim, shout out Tim. He helped organize the first unionized cannabis shop in Washington State. And he's told me stories about like his boss was ex-cartel, and it was just, he's like, it was the easiest transition as soon as it became legal. To sell. He's like, it was just a quick transition. You could just do it legally now. And he's like, he told me like crazy stories about how he was treated, and like how the feds would like come in and raid, and just, that was like X amount of years ago, but that shit like continues. And a lot of these people are still in business. So it can be really shady. People are just like taking advantage of other people. I'm very protective of the stoner community in general and the cannabis community for a lot of different reasons. But ultimately, like some of the most incredible people I've met, the most intelligent, the most empathetic, the most like open-minded, the most ingenuitive, like they utilize cannabis. And to just continue a narrative that is one old and incorrect and rooted in so many fucking issues, systematic issues. Like systematic racism is like at the fucking like root of all this shit too. Like, I don't know. It's just, I'm like, don't take advantage of that shit. Like, I'm like, fuck off. It's like, if you are going to employ people to sell this to make a profit, and you need people who are actually knowledgeable, like you need people who know weed. You need people who have a specialized skill to do this, and to say that like, oh, you're unskilled labor, like anybody can do your job. It's like, nah, fuck off. We used to always be like, you get on this floor and you try to sell weed. It's like, work a full day with people asking you very specific questions about very specific things. It's just crazy to me. So yeah, there's money in it. Going back to the small business thing, it's possible. And also, like I was saying earlier, if you treat your employees well, you treat your workers well, they will not have to unionize. It is simple. All we are asking for is for the right to do it. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a guarantee. It's not like as soon as these people have the right to do it, everybody will be unionized. No, it's still going to be an uphill fucking battle. And like right now we're facing, our fight it looks very different now because the NLRB is probably going to be slashed. It's probably going to fucking like just be kaput. Like once Trump gets his little grimy fingers on it, you know what I mean? And we're facing a different kind of uphill battle than we faced in the past. And it just, yeah, I don't know. It's just very clearly they want to start taking things away. They want to make it so hard for us to utilize our legal rights to take care of ourselves and advocate for ourselves as workers. And it's really important that we start talking about it. And it's all intertwined. Like when we talk about like the American oligarchy, I don't know if we've talked about it on this podcast. Do you know?
Maybe,
really?
Nominally.
Maybe a little bit. Because like that's what, we're in an oligarchy. The billionaires, the people, the richies, it's a rich oligarchy. And they're also the ones who, like, all the politicians are in their pockets, right? Like, especially the MAGA, this like fascist administration. And like, they don't give a fuck about workers' rights. Like, they want to pay the people who are doing the labor to make them the money as little as they can so they can keep it. And when, you know, and when they have the power to squash these things, like, I have no doubt that they're gonna try to like take our right to unionize away. I really do. You know, like, that's the kind of energy that they give. So the reason this kind of bill that was introduced like at a state level is so important is because it protects those rights at least somewhere, right? And every worker deserves to have rights, and like rights that are legally protected. And cannabis is, you know, it's one of those. It's one of those fucking industries. And then you get into the agriculture. It's like, why not just make sure that everybody has it? You know, it becomes a moral thing, though, I think. You know?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button on my mic. Yeah, I think it's rooted in all of that. I think if you just like look a little bit under the surface, it's pretty obvious what's happening right now socially on a larger level. I think that, right now, people need to be clinging to their labor unions and their right to organize and unionize more than ever. Yeah. As you stated, I think it's very important that this bill passes to us, regarding House Bill 1141. I think this could not only be a milestone for agriculture workers in general to organize and unionize, but I think it further will legitimize cannabis as an industry in this state, and I think it will help drive revenue, if anything. You know, any little steps that they can take are going to be good. As you said, it passed through the House, and that's a good first step.
It's a huge first step. Honestly, to even get this kind of a bill sponsored is a huge step, especially for cannabis. And just, you know, even if it's a baby step, though, like, despite all of my ranting and raving, and despite like how looming the future looks, because it is, like, kind of like what I was talking about earlier, it's like we can't live in it, you know, and the only thing we can do is keep on fucking fighting. And sometimes you got to double down, and that means that we have to try to start somewhere. And even baby steps can lead to really big steps. And the fact that like a cannabis bill was heard at all is, I would say it's even more than a baby step. I would say it's a big step. Just because the like, to have like the legitimacy of the cannabis industry and just like cannabis in general, like out in like open conversation about like needing to be like protected and respected ultimately, like that's what we're fighting for. Because outside of even just unionizing, getting to cannabis, let's get to the cannabis part of it. Like outside of just like the right to unionize, like that's just a worker issue. Then we need to get back to like the rights as like people who utilize cannabis and like people, you know, in the industry, in the community, like who utilize it as medicine and whatnot. We also, like, they have the right, we have the right, the community has the right to be recognized as like a legitimate community that is utilizing something because it helps, it's medicinal. Like, there are reasons. We have to fight these kind of things in the courts, in like the places of law, because cannabis has been like, you know, illegal and because of the history of it. So we have to show up in those places. But whoa, hold on. Where was I going?
The train is off the tracks.
It's off the rails.
You were making a sentiment about, you know, just the importance of
ADHD.
Of cannabis users and the benefits of the plant from a medicinal point. It's all part of your great theory and your great nexus on life.
Thank you. Yes, you're right. It's just workers' rights like include cannabis worker rights. And if you're talking cannabis worker rights, then you need to talk about the industry and like the reason it exists, which is the community. And you need to talk about why it's important that this community is listened to and heard, and why it's important that like we can strip away bias and we can strip away these narratives and these stories that have been told for so long about this plant. Not even for so long, like in the last 100 years, you know, it's crazy as well. Like, it's these biases, like people, I feel like talk like it's been around for so long, and it's like no, this is like very fucking new, and in regards to like the grand scheme of things, and we have to like be willing to like strip that all away and just be like, okay, well, what are we actually talking about? We're talking about a plant that grows naturally. Oftentimes as a weed, people literally like they see it as a weed where it grows naturally. Like hemp itself like grows in fucking abundance, and like hemp is so important. You talked about I was talking about textiles earlier, like agriculture, like hemp was vital to like the creation of our like foundation of America. And that's like not talked about, but we have to get back to like just recognizing what it is. It's like it's a plant. It helps people. In fact, it historically has been used medicinally, and we need to just stop projecting our feelings and stop projecting like colonialism and all these like racist beliefs. Like we have to stop projecting that shit onto it and just like recognize what it is, and we have to start talking about it that way. And I'm just grateful that it gets talked about now in like fucking in rooms of our fucking law, right? It's getting talked about in Olympia. So that's just a win. That's where we have to start.
And there's still plenty of time for the public to voice their support for this.
Yes. Yes.
Right now, it's going to go to the House floor after the first cutoff.
Let's go.
If it gets to the House floor, it'll be back into the Senate's hands now, and the public will be invited to testify on that bill when, if and when, let's say,
hell yeah, dude,
it passes the floor session for the House.
Let's go.
And we can go support it again if y'all are so inclined.
I'm probably, I would love to be able to work up to testifying.
I think you could definitely do that. I think you should do that.
Thank you. I will. I'll be more. I'll be more organized, of course. Also, I learned you have 90 seconds to testify. When you were, it's crazy. It's so fast.
If it's a hearing where there's not a ton of people, or if they're only doing a couple bills and there's not a lot, they won't be as strict about it. But if they have a nice roster of people testifying on this and the hearing in general, if there's a lot of bills they're getting to, they'll cut it down to 60 seconds sometimes. I've seen them cut it down to 30 too.
30's crazy. They ended up cutting it down to 60 when I was there for this bill, but it's crazy like what goes into this. It's been very enlightening. I will say, so I've been working with, so my union that I'm a part of, I came to it because I helped our cannabis shop become unionized. And I was really excited because I was like, I'm very passionate about obviously cannabis rights. And I'm really interested in being involved in like legislation and advocacy in that way. And like, honestly, like lobbying ultimately. And I'm grateful that this has like given me the opportunity to kind of like get my foot in that door and just like see that world. Which is like a world that anybody can go see. That's also something that's they don't really like. Nobody's talking really about the fact that like the public can go to these hearings. If it is a public hearing, like you can just show up and see what's up.
Yeah, you can literally just go. You don't even have to dress fancy if you don't want to.
No,
you'll get a lot of funny looks from people.
Yeah,
you don't have to.
No, you can just be there as a member of the public, and I'm grateful though to have kind of gotten an introduction to that world because. As I continue to move forward, who knows where I'll be once my this like internship that I'm doing basically is up. But I'm passionate about cannabis advocacy and just in general. And this bill happens to include union rights, like advocacy for that as well. And these are both worlds that I have a lot of experience in, and they're both like I was saying earlier, they are intrinsically linked because they're all rooted in like the systematic oppression. And because of it, it's like, it's everybody's fight. Anybody that is fighting an oppressed fight, it's like we're fighting a fight for each other. And it's like, I will continue to fight my fight because I also want, all these other communities to be able to fight their fight. And, if I can, to hit two birds with one stone, like, all right. I mean, not even birds, hit 2 billionaires with one stone. Hell yeah, let's go. But I think I'm excited to follow this bill. It's fun to also see something kind of from like its beginning because I was there when we also were able to find somebody to help sponsor it, which is really fucking cool. So once it kind of like continues to grow and blossom, who knows what it can become, but we're going to continue following it and hope and giving updates because I kind of now that I'm getting back into the swing of things and we have our new studio set up and it's so cool and we have our new fancy microphone, we've been really investing in Tuned In dropped out ultimately, but also of course this project. But now that we're here and now that a new fire's been relit under my ass about just like, obviously we're gonna need to rest a lot the next 4 years. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to like take care of each other and like turn to community. But we also have to take a lot of action. And even though I'm like every day, I'm like, I'm just tired, it's like a bones tired these days. I will say I feel more invigorated and I feel like I'm ready to like just dive in and just start giving it the energy that it needs. Because our stakes are here. They're high, The reality of it is it's a radical acceptance and we got to start somewhere. And you know what? I'm like, if it means that I can help advocate for cannabis rights, it's like, if that's a fight that I can help fight, I'm going to fucking do it. Like, I've already been wanting to, I've already been trying to, but, I feel extra invigorated and ready to rumble. But yeah, so hopefully we'll start talking a little bit more about, this kind of stuff. I'd love to continue keeping up, like bringing updates to folks about like what's happening in the world of legislation with cannabis, and just like in general. And of course, getting back to the medicinal parts and the science of it all. We did see that there's a new plant that has been discovered to have a good amount of CBD in it.
Yeah, Brazil,
right?
Like a common weed.
A common weed. So that's exciting. It's just, opening up that just door, all these doors can help open up more doors to like more success. So I'm excited about it. But yeah, we're back. I'm back. We're gonna, I think, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna make it, we're gonna do this. Commit, proper. Not that I wasn't committed before, but, life is just a life sometimes. And you have to take your priorities and figure out where you need to put your spoons. And I'm really excited to have spoons to put here again,
Very well said. And I'll close with this for my end, and I'll let you take us home. In the words of the late, great Scott Hall of NWO and Outsiders fame in his WWE Hall of Fame acceptance speech, tough times don't last, but tough people do.
Oh, let's fucking go. All right, let's end it on that. Love y'all. Take care of yourself. Eat something. Drink some water. Smoke if you need it, if you got it. And yeah, keep giggling. Keep laughing. It'll help us. It'll get you through. Oh, shit! She's gone!